Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we'll have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by the Jem Fuller. Good morning to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Pete, and recognizing that it's morning over here.
Yes.
In the future, the sun still came up tomorrow for you, so you can rest assured everything's still here.
Well, I've got the kids to bed. Everything's quiet in the house here, and you're the other end. You're getting up and starting the day. So, listen,
Yeah.
we're going truly sort of other end of the globe. So that's the beauty of it. So, welcome to the show, Jem. It's always great to have you on. So,
Yeah, thank you.
just to give everyone a bit of a background, so Jem Fuller has lived a colorful global life, from barefoot backpacker to corporate leader, fire dancer and traditional tattooist, kindergarten teacher to motorcycle courier, masseuse and reflexology to labor and travel consultant. Now his time is as partner and father, coach, facilitator and retreat leader. He is the author of the recently published book, The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men, and can also be seen delivering his TEDx talk on YouTube as well. You're a busy man, Jem. Thank you very much for affording us your time.
Yeah, I am. I'm a busy man, and in a wonderful way. I'm very blessed. I feel super grateful. I love what I do. It wasn't always like this. I've spent big chunks of my life doing stuff that I didn't enjoy and pretending to be happy when I was deeply unhappy. But that's not the case now. So yeah, I feel super grateful. So, am I happy?
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, no, I am. I reckon I'm one of the happiest people I know, funnily enough. There's some strategies behind that, but yeah, I am generally a really happy person. But it's funny when I hear the bio read back, I even go, what? How did I fit all of that into 50 years? But I did. So
What I mean, for you, I mean, what is your core fire in your belly, and are you where you are supposed to be today? Do you think? It's a two-part question, by the way.
yeah. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be today.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, because here I am. So apparently this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm certainly not going to argue with reality in a snapshot of time, in terms of the future and where am I going. I believe I've got a lot to say about that, a lot to do with that. And the way that I approach this given present moment certainly has something to do with where I'm going for sure. But if we could take a snapshot of time, am I where I'm supposed to be? 100%. And what's it like where I am? It's actually really good. I feel blessed. I live a really wonderful life. So that's all great. And then to the first part of the question, the fire in my belly. I guess really existentially, Pete, it comes into being a part of evolution, which I am, right? We are, whether we like it or not. And whether you resist change or not, change is happening and you're a part of it. And so rather than resisting the evolutionary change that is happening, embracing it is one step better, I think. But having my say in designing it, for me, is even more engaging. And what I mean by that is I believe that we can improve. I believe we can learn from the past and get better in the future. And I have this love for humanity, despite the fact that there's large parts of humanity that's so dysfunctional. And I watch humans, and the way that we behave globally on the big stage, and I shake my head with a lot of our stuff, and I go, "Oh, really, people? What are you doing, humans?" But I can't help but love us. I can't help but have this positive foundation to my outlook. And I believe, and there's a lot of good people, and when you go looking for them, I don't watch mainstream news. If I watched mainstream news, my view of the world would be bleak and grim, and so I don't watch it. I hang out with people like you, people who are out there having good conversations, trying to make the world a better place, trying to connect with other good humans doing good work. And when you have your focus, your lens facing in that direction, it's uplifting, man. There's a lot of good people. There's a lot of good stuff going on. And so the fire in my belly is to be my part in that. I know it sounds cliche, but to play my part to help make the world a better place, but I genuinely do care about that, because it makes getting up in the morning for me meaningful, because there's purpose. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was awesome. I'm going to flick back there because you talked about humanity and almost the state of humanity as such. And I mean, is humanity where it needs to be, or do you think we are just truly wrecking all our because there's two sides to see. You see a war, you see all these things, and it's kind of going, listen, that's the lesson you need to learn right now. And it's like, I wouldn't choose it, but crack on and ultimately you'll sort of learn the lesson. Or do you think we are bending where we're supposed to be?
Yeah, look, there's two ways that I look at that, and they both coexist. I guess they're at ends of a scale of duality. And so in the one moment, as I think about the answer to your question, is humanity where it's supposed to be? Apparently, because here we are. Right. So and I think people spend a lot of time wasting their energy fighting with reality. It shouldn't be like this. Yeah, but it is. Yeah, but it shouldn't be. Yeah, but it is. Right. Now that's at one end of the scale of this conversation. At the other end, I'm certainly not about complacency. I'm certainly not about saying, well, it just is the way it is, so therefore we may as well just give up and not try and make things better. That doesn't seem functional to me. So as I'm forward facing and thinking, how would I like things to be in the future, whether that's for me personally, whether that's for me and my partner and our children, or whether that's for community or more globally, how do I think things should be in the future, and what can I do to try and affect that? That's a different question. But again, if we could take a snapshot, Pete, right now, is humanity where it's supposed to be? Well, obviously, apparently, here we are. And you can fight with reality till you're blue in the face. There's a quote from an author and a thinker, quite a wonderful woman called Byron Katie. I don't know if you've heard of her. And Byron Katie says, you can fight with reality if you want to, but reality will win only 100% of the time. Right. And I love that. So, look, the state of the game at the moment is exactly as it's supposed to be. Should it stay like this forever? Hopefully not. We're doing a really good job of ruining the planet, and it's actually really interesting. If this was a movie, I'd be on the edge of my seat, because I don't know whether we're going to get out of this mess that we've created. I don't know. There are people who are giving it a red hot crack. There are people who are really doing some wonderful things to try and get us out of the climate crisis, and to set us up to be better positioned for the next pandemic, and trying to do things for inequality and all these bigger problems. But there's a lot of people with their head in the sand, and there's a lot of people distracted, dude. Distracted. They're fighting about, and I don't mean any disrespect when I say this at all, but they're fighting about what pronoun I should call them when the climate crisis is going to kill us all potentially. Right? You're getting angry with me and you want to cancel me because I wrote a book for men, not for all people. Really? Have you even asked me what my intention was behind that book before you start saying that, I shouldn't be allowed to be a public figure because of that? There's bigger problems going on, people, right? The next pandemic could wipe us all out. We got off easy with this one, so I think humans get distracted with stuff that doesn't really matter too much.
I mean, in some ways it sort of dovetails in quite nicely, because I mean, your book, The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men, the thoughtful bit, I'm really picking up on that, and really, your thoughts here about, what I'm hearing is how we think, how we act, how we do is all about our thoughtfulness for ourselves and for each other. Is that a fair pickup?
Yeah, that's a great pickup. Yeah, it's a great pickup. It kind of is in the same conversation as mindfulness, being more conscious, being more aware, being more thoughtful, being more considerate. I love that. That's a great pickup.
For you then, and I'm sure we're going to go over the journey, but when did your fire in your belly actually start to come into fruition? Because you're saying it wasn't always like this. There was a change. And when did that change come about?
Look, the first thing that comes to mind is my midlife. I call it my midlife awakening, actually. Most people would look at it from the outside and call it a midlife crisis.
I call it my midlife opportunity. So there you go. I like it.
Yeah.
Awakening. Yeah, I love it. Go for it.
Yeah. Midlife opportunity. I have used that phrase as well, midlife awakening. That's when the fire in my belly really became what it is today. I've had fire in my belly in previous chapters of my life towards different things, and usually more egotistical and more hedonistic in my earlier days. You know, I wanted to be a famous actor, and I went to the best drama school here in Australia, and I was determined to be a film star. And, you know, that was all about me. Even as a singer-songwriter, which was a little bit less about me because it was more vulnerable, and I was sharing my songs because I was hoping that it would bring people joy to listen to my music. But even that still was more hedonistic. And then, you know, after becoming a father and then a very unhappy marriage in the end, and a career that, you know, had me being really far away from my values, drinking way too much booze, working too hard, partying too hard, and pretending to be happy. And then the crisis, in inverted commas, the awakening, where I lost everything, lost the career, lost the marriage, lost the house, lost everything. I walked away 50-50 with my kids. So I still had my two boys, you know, week on, week off, which meant everything to me, and a whole bunch of debt and nothing, no content. I had a guitar and a surfboard. That was it, you know, in my early 40s, and started all over again. And that's when this fire in my belly, which I believe, I mean, look, I don't know the future, but I believe this fire in my belly is the thing that will sustain me living an engaged and meaningful life from now on, because it just burns. This fire in my belly burns. And I spend time contemplating it and putting clear language around it as well. So it's not just some arbitrary motivational energy burning inside me that I don't have clarity about. I'm super clear on it. You know, it's my North Star. If I've got two options in front of me and I have to choose one, I'm running it through the litmus test of the fire in my belly. What's best going to serve this mission I'm on? So that, yeah, it kind of, in answer to your question, that this fire in my belly really started burning and became clearer since the midlife awakening, which was 9 years ago now.
Did that have to happen, do you think?
Yeah. Had to happen for me to have this, you know, to be experiencing life the way I am now, which, like I said to you earlier, is for me truly remarkable. For me to be experiencing life this way now, I had to go through that. You know, and it wasn't just this midlife awakening that came out of nowhere. There was years of torture, internal torture and suffering and unhappiness leading up to it, all covered under a big thick blanket of shame, you know, because I was so ashamed of my own insecurities that I had this thick veneer, and I would present to the outside world like I was successful and happy, you know, corporate leadership and earning good money and flying business class and building a house in a beautiful town and the marriage and the kids and ticking all those boxes, the happiness boxes. And under all of it, you know, a lot of self-loathing and confusion and anxiety and unhappiness.
Wow. Quite a journey, as you say, you know, because we go through a lot, right, in our lives, you know, but have you been this version of you before? I mean, in your lifetime, do you think it's, you know, because people sort of typically through their childhood and then they go on this journey and they separate from who they truly are, but have you been this version of you, or are you now as close to you as you're ever going to get?
Yeah, that's such a great question. You know, perhaps this movement through our experiences in life is like a spiral. So, you know, you find yourself circling back to feeling like you've been here before in terms of this experience of being you. It's like, I feel like I've been here before, but I'm different than I was the first time round because I've lived more. So I'm back, but I'm spiraling, maybe, perhaps. Yeah, look, I think up until about the age of 6, this is all come from a lot of reflection and contemplation. Up until about the age of 6 was my age of innocence, and no reason to be unhappy or scarred or cynical at all. And life was just the life of a 5-year-old, and beautiful and innocent and happy. And, and then there was an event when I was 6, Dad lost his temper. And by the way, I had full resolution with my father before he died. However, my relationship with my father was the catalyst for a lot of who I am today in terms of my rebellion and my anti-establishment bent that had me kind of living a punk life for a long time. And so when I was 6, he lost his temper and he beat me up and really scared the hell out of me. And that was when I first started to subconsciously, inadvertently started to believe that I wasn't good enough. I'm not good enough for this man on the pedestal. I'm not good enough for my father to love me without hurting me, because he really scared me when he lost his temper and beat me up. And he used to discipline us with a smack. That was just the house I grew up in. And he also would rule the house with fear. So, if he wanted to get us in line, all he had to do was clap his hands twice. I'll always remember it. Just go clap, clap. And we would be like scared and quiet and submissive. So look, he was also a lovely man. He was the secretary of the church council, and he was on Rotary, and he was a community giver. And if you ask people who knew him in the community, they would tell you he was just a lovely man doing beautiful work. But the duality of it was that he was also a pretty messed up dude, and had his own struggles. And so I was me growing up and then starting to believe I wasn't good enough was under the awe of him. And so I think I started to move further away from who I really am in terms of my core truth, and then I started trying to pretend to be who I thought I should be. And I went through lots of different chapters. Like I said, I was a punk squatting in abandoned buildings in London for years, and barefoot wandering around India and the subcontinent for years, living outdoors, cooking off a fire, smoking a lot of hash. So there's been many different chapters, and I think a lot of them was me trying to figure out who am I in this big crazy soup, and then coming out the other side of this awakening, which happened after quite a phenomenal sweat lodge, North American Indian sweat lodge experience, coming out the other side of that and really having an identity opportunity to go, wow, how do I want to identify? Which you get to make up, right? And we made it up in the first place, but we get to make it up. And so who am I and who do I want to be? And I've had the opportunity to really rewrite that again this time round. And so this is a long answer to your question, Pete, but now it feels like I'm more authentically me than I've ever been up until about 6 years old.
Do you like yourself now? Do you love yourself?
Oh, love. Yeah, completely. Yeah, I do. This is how I feel about myself. I'm a really good man. I'm kind, I'm generous, I'm loving, I care, I'm passionate, I'm action taking. I've brainwashed myself to love myself. Literally fired the neurons so many times that they've wired together, and I believe my own hype. So am I worthy of love? Well, philosophically, I believe we all are. But did I love myself before like this? No. So how did I change? Persistence, consistency, determination, and repetition every day, out loud. I'm good enough just the way I am. I'm good enough just the way I am. Over and over and over and over again. Over a period of about a year, after reading some books around the findings that neuroscience have been able to discover in terms of how neurons wire together. And I wired these neurons intentionally, and it took a long time. And so now affirmations are a part of my daily habitual practice. I meditate every morning, and then I've got my affirmations that I say out loud every day. I still look at myself in the mirror and soften. I look at myself with the same compassion that I would look at one of my children with, unconditional love. I look myself in the mirror and say, you're a good man, keep going. You're on a good mission. You've got a good heart. Your intentions are good. Sometimes you stuff up. That's okay. You're human. Carry on, mate. You're doing good work. I say this to myself regularly. So I've convinced myself to love myself. It didn't just kind of come in a pre-wrapped packet, you know.
It's so funny because I was chatting to someone today and sort of saying how much life is a game of you versus you, and really
Yeah.
what you've just described there is it's that it is the, you can think good of yourself, you can think bad of yourself and all of it, but one thing is you're going to be stuck with you, and you got to get used to who you are. You got to get to like who you are. You don't have to like who you are, but bloody hell, it's going to be a long journey if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. Radical self-acceptance, I call it. Radical self-acceptance. And again, this is similar to the conversation we were having earlier. Radical self-acceptance doesn't mean complacency. It doesn't mean that you don't want to improve or evolve or continue to expand into your potential if you want to. What I mean about radical self-acceptance is that snapshot idea. If we could freeze time right now, you are exactly who you are supposed to be, apparently, because there you are. So you can either accept that or you can fight reality and go, no, but I should be faster or stronger or better looking or more intelligent, or I should be richer, wealthier. I should, you know, you can do all of that till the cows come home. You're not going to change it. Reality, that is, right? And everything that's happened in the past, every decision I've made, good, bad, or ugly, every action I took, functional or dysfunctional, everything I ever said or did to myself or anyone else, whether it was loving or cruel or whatever it was, apparently I should have done it. Why? Because I did. Can't change it. Does that mean I want to repeat the mistakes in the future? Hopefully not. Hopefully we learn and grow and evolve, right? But everything that's happened should have. You know, this is radical self-acceptance. I should be the height that I am. I should have brown eyes, apparently. I should have, you know, my whole physical body should be the way it is, apparently. You know, I don't have time to fight with things I can't change. You know, there's more important stuff to put my attention to.
But is that not what everyone, I say everyone, I mean, that's a mass generalization, but that's what so many people do. They fight to not be who they are. They fight to be the present version of themselves. You know, if only I was this, or I shouldn't have done that, or, you know, if I was a better person, I would be something, everything but themselves. And it's, I kind of liken it for skiing. It's really hard to ski badly. It's hard work.
Yeah.
It's a bit like being a sort of a bad human. It's really hard work to be a bad human. Yeah. What I'm picking
takes
up,
a lot of energy, doesn't it?
It does take a huge amount of energy when you actually come back and say, no, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. There's a lesson here. This is for me. Totally different, right?
Yeah. And I think that's why social media, the different social media channels have been so successful, because they're capitalizing on that. They're capitalizing on these kids, not even kids, adults, you know, scrolling through pages and pages and pages of other people who look like they've got it all together, you know, who have the holiday that I want to have, who have the complexion that I want to have, or the clothes that I want to have, or the life that I want to have. It's just this, people are just scrolling and looking, and, you know, that's been measured, man, that you spend a period of time scrolling on social media, you come off and your sense of well-being, happiness has decreased. And they're measuring this, you know, and it's people just constantly feeling like they're not good enough, and validating that by looking at other people going, I wish I was more like them, you know.
That's so, is it sad? I mean, what do you make of it?
Oh, you know, as you and I sit here and talk about it, it's interesting. It's is it unfortunate? I mean, it is what it is, right? So it's a part of being human. There's, you know, it's when we're talking about it conceptually, philosophically, it just is what it is. And I see an opportunity for us to evolve and improve. I see a massive opportunity for me in the work that I do with leaders, helping them be more conscious, and this whole radical self-acceptance piece, so that they can get out of their own way, stop making it about them, and serve. You know, I believe that when you're caught up in your own stuff, there's less of you that is able to see clearly and serve. So the more okay you are with yourself, the less you can make it about you, and then you can go and do good work. So when you and I are having conversation, that's how I view it. In a moment when it's a loved one who's beating themselves up, it's sad. If you're watching, I'm watching one of my teenage boys go through the lockdowns and through the pandemic, experiencing depression and anxiety and beating themselves up, and it's terribly sad. So on a personal level, experientially, it's sad, but conceptually and philosophically, it's interesting. I think.
Break that down for us, because you talked there about it being, and the work that you do at leadership level. I mean, does that where more powerful leaders come from? Is those that are more conscious and are service driven or growth driven or love driven? They're on a different driver as opposed to egoically driven, I'm assuming. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And what attracted you to leaders?
So again, a lovely two-part question. I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe that truly great, or let's say effective leaders have the mission as the focus, the purpose, the mission, the reason why for their particular cause is the focus. So this is service. And also at the same time, however they've got there, they've got to a place where they've got to a certain level of self-okayness where it doesn't need to be about them so much. I mean, it is about you because you're the leader, but you're not caught up in all of your self-doubt and self-worry and, second guessing yourself. It's like, no, I'm actually okay with myself. It's not about me. It's about this mission. Let's go. Right. I think, leaders who have a good quality of confidence. The quality of confidence is something I've been thinking a lot about lately. My team and I are designing a measurement tool, but that's a whole other story. So yes, I think that's for a leader, that's that. And how did I get attracted to leadership? I've always ended up in leadership roles, whatever I was doing. And then through my one kind of crack at a corporate career, at a proper job, I had a proper job for 8 years of my life. Other than that, I've never had a proper job. But I had a proper job for 8 years with a suit and a tie, and ended up in senior leadership. And the organization that I worked for were really quite good at investing in leadership development. So we learned about human behavior and, neuro-linguistic programming a little bit, and, profiling and coaching and all the stuff I love. And I got introduced to that through the organization I was working with. And that aspect of leadership I loved. How to be a better leader is how to be a better coach, how to have clarity, how to have vision and purpose. So I learned about it, was interested in it. The midlife thing happened. I'd already had in my mind that I wanted to go and become qualified in coaching and NLP and behavioral profiling, etc. Did that, started my own business, was a generalist coach. I was coaching anyone who would come to me and have me coach them. But it just, your niche kind of comes to you, right? It just comes. So I just started coaching more and more leaders. And I love coaching leaders because if I can help a leader be more effective and be happier and more conscious and aware, the ripple effect is there, right? Because they're influencing people beyond who I will meet. So I love the idea of helping leaders because it's helping more people down the track inadvertently as well.
It's great. And I suppose leaders typically are motivated individuals. They might be slightly off track. They might be whatever, right? But they are motivated. They have resources. They have ambitions, goals, etc.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It is always interesting to see that. And curious, I mean, are you unemployable now?
Yeah, because I won't go and work for anyone. So yes, I am unemployable.
So many people say to me, you go to entrepreneurship and it's like, yeah, I've become unemployable. It's like, I wouldn't hire me. Would hire me. So
yeah,
it was interesting that you do get past a point and saying, yeah, no, I'm not I wouldn't be good in in a normal.
Yeah. Don't put me in there and pay me a wage. That's a great question. I've never been asked that before. And I think the answer is probably yes. I am unemployable.
Talk to us about your book and what was your intention?
So initially the intention was to write a book about communication. And the reason for that is that, through thousands of hours of coaching and also, decades of traveling around the world and immersing myself in very foreign cultures, foreign to me. And also through the experience of a 20-year marriage that we didn't know how to reconcile and went too far south and had to end. And then now a really conscious relationship where the communication is easy and stunning and aware and beautiful. So through all these experiences of life, it became pretty apparent to me that us humans, we trip over a lot in miscommunication. Whether it's two team members who are stuck in confrontation and disagreement, whether it's two departments within an organization that are at loggerheads with each other, or whether it's, two people in a romantic relationship who are missing each other. The love is there. They love each other, but they're missing each other in the communication, and it's really hard work for them. Or the two departments working for the same organization, when you dig a little bit deeper, they actually do care about the same higher purpose of that organization, but they're in some irreconcilable misunderstanding, or the teammates. And it's all about communication. But also communication as well, Pete. Einstein wouldn't have been able to change our understanding of the mechanics of the universe if he couldn't communicate his genius ideas, right? So you take an idea, you cannot manifest that into reality without being able to communicate it. And then also watching the state of play around the world as these, different groups of people who've identified with their politic, and they have a purpose that they're trying to affect change around, and they have their opposition on the other side of Twitter, and they're just shouting at each other and trying to cancel each other. It's not evolving the situation. That is not improving the state of play. You're just shouting at each other. In fact, it's arguably making it worse, because you're playing into this division, and whether that's completely politically driven or not, I'm sure there are politicians out there who are divisive enough to use the algorithms to create division and blah, blah, blah. So that's a whole other conversation. But for the people who really care about their cause, to just shout at the rest of the world and try and cancel anyone else who disagrees with you is not helping. All right? It's just poor, unintelligent communication. So I was looking at everything and going, wow, we really need to improve our ability to communicate. So I started writing a book about more conscious communication. I chose a book writing mentor, wonderful woman here in Australia called Susan Pearce. If anyone's looking for a book writing mentor, I think she's great. Look her up. And she said to me, Jem, you need to pick an audience. It's a great manuscript. I'm loving what you're saying, but you need to pick an audience and write for someone in particular. She said, I think men could really do well with this book right now. And I'm passionate about humans in general, but I'm also passionate about men. I've been sitting in a men's circle for a long time, sitting around a fire with a bunch of men talking about meaningful stuff. It upsets me, the old brand of men and the cultural indoctrination. As a father of two teenage boys, watching us as a culture teach our young boys to suck it up, man up, harden up, toughen up, don't cry like a girl, vulnerability is a weakness, I think that's outdated and should be irrelevant, and we should be changing that. So I'm passionate about that. And so, I thought, great, I'll write it for men. And I put thoughtful men in the title, because I reckon most men see themselves as being thoughtful. And funnily enough, Pete, I don't know if you've noticed this, you're an author as well. It tends to be, and especially with self-help books, it tends to be women who pick these books up more often than not. And I'm getting a lot of emails from women saying, thank you so much for writing that book. I got a lot from it, and now I'm giving it to my husband or my brother or my son, So that's how the book came about.
Just break down or define for me the definition of communication, would you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, if we go right back to the Latin roots of the word, communication came from the Latin noun communicatio, which means a sharing, and the Latin verb communicare, which means to make common, right? So essentially at the root of the meaning of the word is if you and I are going to communicate, we're going to make something common. It's going to be a sharing. We're going to come to a common place of understanding, which doesn't mean always agreement. We don't always have to agree with each other, but we can at least understand each other. This is communication.
See, it's interesting, I suppose, because I'm probably referring back as well to the likes of NLP, which, there's communication. Some people would see it as just the words that we say and what we do, right? But, so much of it is tone, so much of it is, your presence, so much of it is your energy level, so much of it, there's so much to communication. It's like people say to me, what's the difference between listening and hearing? To me, they're completely different. And I suppose to really communicate is to really hear. That would be my definition, saying it's almost like the words are great, but they're really not touching the edge in terms of what's really being said or communicated here. Does that make sense?
Completely. Yeah, absolutely. When you think about it, I'm guessing it's probably quite a small percentage of communication that is literal, i.e. the words I'm saying right now is exactly what I want to communicate. And that's usually when it's just perfunctory, like I'm giving you directions. You said to me, Jem, I'll meet you at that pub that you go to. Where's the pub? And I say, well, you head down Elizabeth Street, take the second left, turn right. And I just mean what I say, right? But I think out of all of communication, that part of it is probably quite a small percentage. I think more communication is, like you're saying, it's suggested and implied and sometimes not even words. If your partner comes and sits next to you and puts her or his head on your chest, in that moment, there's a communication, and it might be, I need to feel safe right now. I need you to sit still and hold me. I need to feel held. I need to feel like everything's okay. Or the communication might be, I appreciate you and I love you and adore you. There's no words. It's just this moment, So yeah, 100% you're right. Tonality. And another interesting thing too, if you look at the different energies. So if we were to look at masculine and feminine energy, and for the listener, I don't mean men and women. Men can be in their feminine, men can access their feminine energy, women can access their masculine. So I'm not talking about men and women, I'm talking about these two energy styles. Masculine energy communicates completely literally. How was your day? Today was terrible. Today was okay, means okay. Today was great, means today was great. A spade is a spade, says the masculine energy. Feminine energy speaks laterally and suggestively and not literally. Feminine energy doesn't necessarily say what it means. How was your day? Fine. Doesn't necessarily mean fine. But if someone's in their masculine energy and they ask their partner, how was your day? And their partner says, fine, the masculine takes it literally. Fine. Oh, okay, that's good. Well, there's no problems. I don't need to ask any further. You're fine. And now the feminine energy is standing there potentially thinking, you don't care about me because I'm not really fine, but you don't care because you're not digging any deeper. So they've lost each other in communication.
There's a line of thought that, we talk about, the conscious mind, again, it's up for debate, but the conscious mind's about 10% and the subconscious mind's about 90% of what we're made up of. And then some have gone further, and I kind of get it in terms of saying almost the conscious mind is the masculine side of us, the thinking brain, the sort of, right, we'll go and thump it with a hammer type thing. And then the subconscious mind is the feminine brain, or the feminine aspect of us. Does that relate to you at all? Does that make sense for you?
It's interesting. I think that might be the first time I've heard that. And that's great. I love hearing new ideas, new to me, because now my mind's now going, oh, I wonder, because there's parts of that make sense. I'd have to think about it a lot more. I certainly understand that most of what we do is subconscious, and most of what the brain does, by the way, is running this system, this body of ours that we're completely unaware of. And I also, I love the practice of being more conscious, spending more time noticing whatever it is that you can notice. And I find there's a lot of practical and functional application of that into the quality of your life. The ability to step into a place of observation rather than being identified with the experience, whether you're identified with your thought or your emotion or your physical sensation, but to be able to, teach yourself to sit into a seat of consciousness, of just noticing, just observing, is quite a wonderful ability to develop. But is it masculine energy when you're being conscious? Yeah, look, I've read quite a few books on masculine and feminine energy as well, and they say, and it's not exactly a science, is it? But they say that the masculine is the awareness, like what you were saying, and it's the stillness, whereas the feminine energy is the life force, the movement, the dance, the emotion, the expansion, and masculine energy is the stillness and the consciousness. So yeah, I think that probably relates. Yeah.
Just, break down if you can for us. You talked about actively noticing what's going on around you. I think I understand, but maybe you'd be kind enough to sort of expand on, what does actively noticing involve?
Yeah, sure. Look, essentially it's mindfulness, and mindfulness is an attention to the present moment, and with as little judgment or attachment as possible. It's not easy to be completely non-judgmental of any moment, because as soon as you notice anything, you have a label to it. There's a word that you associate.
The voice, the narrator in our head that's constantly chatting, right?
Yeah.
I take it this is what we're talking about. This is,
Yeah, that too, the narrator in the head that's constantly going, that too can be an object of your observation. You can observe that as well. So mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness, I simplify it into two types of mindfulness: integrated and dedicated. So integrated mindfulness is the practice of mindfulness, i.e. just observing whatever shows up in conscious awareness, whatever you can notice, whether it's a thought or a physical sensation or an emotion or whatever, a sound, anything that you can notice can be an object of your mindful attention. Integrated is doing that in the process of doing something you're ordinarily doing. So brushing your teeth, you can mindfully brush your teeth, which is just noticing what you can notice in the act of brushing your teeth. And you can apply that to anything that you do. And then there's dedicated mindfulness, which essentially is meditation. That's when you dedicate some time to just sit, either with your eyes closed or your eyes open, and simply notice anything that shows up in your conscious awareness. So sounds, sensations, the narrator, the thoughts that bubble along and continually, like a bubbling brook, just always going. You can observe them. And it's a practice. It's not easy. It does. I've had a dedicated practice of mindfulness meditation since 2014 now. So enough years that it's becoming an ability that I have to remove myself from being locked into, I identified in an experience. So if I lose my temper, which doesn't happen anywhere near as much as it used to, but if I do lose my temper, I can get out of that kind of loop, that emotional mental looping, really easily, and come back to a place of equanimity, to a calm center. And that's been something that's been developing over this time of a mindfulness practice.
Is that, I think it's sort of a very key point, and really to bring it back is, realizing that you are not that narrator. You're separate from, to become the third party and saying, that narrator is not me, therefore, what is that? And I know with someone I was trying to describe and saying, if you had this scene in your mind of a court and you've got a judge and you've got a jury and you've got prosecution, the defendants, you've got everyone, it's like, which part of that is the ego? And then you sort of realize that all of it's the ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's that sort of theatrical. Whereas if you can just observe from the outside and say in the space that this whole scene is playing out is actually you. Is it you? Is that your soul, your consciousness? Is that the space?
Yeah, man. Isn't it? It's such a great question. And, humans, people who dedicate their vocations, their lives to trying to understand consciousness and why is there consciousness and what is it? And is that us? They still don't have the answers, which I love. We still don't know. And I love that because the great mystery is exciting for me and full of potential. And yeah, look, I'm fascinated with that. When I'm meditating, and you're lost in thought, and then you remember to come back to that place of observation, and you're just observing, you kind of as consciousness, and then you're not separate from anything, and you're not identified with anything. You're simply observing it. And in those little glimpses, and they are little glimpses, if I'm meditating for half an hour, I reckon accumulatively those little glimpses of not being identified or not being lost in thought, those little moments in half an hour, if I added them all up, I might be lucky to have a couple of minutes of those, and the rest of the other 28 minutes I'm distracted. And you get distracted and you remember, oh, that's right, I'm meditating. And then you get distracted and then you remember. But that's the practice. But what I find fascinating is in those glimpses of being beyond identification, beyond ego, in those glimpses, is that me? Because I think me, as in my sense of identity, is the ego. It is in the identification, because in those glimpses, the experience is as if you are consciousness. It's not you're not a person almost, but at the same time you're aware that you're in that moment. So there's an awareness of awareness. There's an awareness that you're aware of being aware. I don't know. It's trippy, man. It's really, it's fascinating. I don't know. I certainly do know that I can, that I can be aware of my ego, my sense of identity. I can notice that. I can go, oh, wow, ego, look at you go. You were really defensive right then. You were justifying your behavior. You were judging the other person. You're doing all this ego stuff. And I can actually notice it and call it out and go, wow, ego. And have a little conversation with my ego where I say, hey, dude, it's okay. I know you're trying to keep us safe, but we're not in danger right now. There's no lion coming to eat us. We're fine.
Do you name your ego or characterize it or anything?
I call it ego. I call it my ego. To me, my relationship with my ego. So again, my experience of it is that I've kind of got spirit and ego, and ego is all about itself. My ego feels to me like a 13 or 14-year-old petulant young teenage boy. It's all about me. Stamp my feet. I'll get what I want. And I know it. I know more than you think I do, and I know what's going on. And like that young adolescent. That's how the ego feels to me. And then the spirit feels like this wise old sage. And you're right. Like coming back to what you said before, I just thought about then. My spirit to me feels like a wise old woman. Feels feminine somehow. And my spirit is this is just an experience of being human, right? The spirit feels, rather than me-centric, it's we-centric. We're all in this together. It's compassion, it's connection, it's I am of the earth, I am of the universe, not separate from it. The ancient ways of understanding, if you ask the ancient ways of Australian Aboriginals, the indigenous understanding, we don't own this land, we're of the land, which to me makes a whole lot more sense. The ego says, I'm separate from this and I own it. Whereas the spirit is, I am of this and we're all interconnected, intrinsically a part of the same thing, which I think actually makes more sense. Yeah. So in answer to your question, my ego, I haven't given him a name. He calls himself Jem. He's a 13, 14-year-old. He's, and he's all right. He just doesn't know any better. And he's trying to keep us safe. And I have these conversations with the ego. I catch it out and go, oh, mate, look at you go, getting all defensive just then. And I know you're trying to keep us safe, but we're good. And carry on, ego, by the way. I don't try to go to war with the ego. Carry on, but I've got your number. Right? Just calling it out. And that does the world of good. And this is my spirit talking to my ego. People might listen to this and go, wow, you're crazy, man. But what's more crazy? Having that conversation with yourself, pausing, coming out of the identification where the ego is driving the bus, pausing, being aware of what you are about to do and why, and then choosing how to respond in a given moment, having a little conversation in your head between this thing that you call your spirit and this thing that you call having a little conversation and choosing how to respond. Or what's more crazy, or someone who's not even aware of this stuff and is just reacting, completely driven by ego, getting themselves into all sorts of tricky situations, and behaving in a way that's less functional. So I prefer to be aware and have the conversations and continue to practice pausing and choosing how to respond.
I always find it interesting. You ask people and saying, how's the voices in your head? And there's like, I don't have voices, that's crazy talk. It's like, do you talk to yourself? Oh yes, all the time. It's like,
yeah.
It's the same thing, is it not? But it's like, let's not define it in a crazy way. But I have an active hypothesis, and you're going to sort of, this is going to make sense for you. And the hypothesis being that sort of the masculine knowing is like the language of the ego. The thinking is the language of the conscious mind. Feeling is the language of the subconscious mind. And sensing is the language of the soul.
Wow. I love that. That's super cool, man. Is that in one of your books?
No, it's sort of something that's been coming around, but I suppose whenever I mentor and things like that, I try to say to people, because you kind of like, I don't know the ego input here. You're saying, well, what do you feel? If you ask someone and saying, someone said, what do you think? It's like, well, you're now going to basically put your pre-constructs onto me.
Yeah.
Whereas, saying, as this happened, how did you feel about that? It's like, well, I felt this. And it's a genuine thing. Or what's your sense here? Because if you invite thinking, or if you invite knowing, the ego's going, yeah, okay, thanks very much. I'm delighted to come and take a front step here and tell you everything that I know. Whereas I think as humans, if we do nothing more and saying, how does that feel for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the ego exists in the thinking, right? It exists in thoughts. If there was no thought, there'd be no sense of identity.
Well, that because the ego can't exist in the now, right? Or can it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe not. Maybe it exists in the split second ago, or the anticipation of the next split second. But if you are completely present in the now, that it doesn't. And so ego. I mean, Eckhart Tolle says that the ego exists in the thinking, in the thoughts, right? And also, in our recollection of the past and everything that's happened, and all of our pre-judgment of the next moment comes from our experience from the past in the thinking, the way we think about things, and that's where our sense of identity exists. One of my teenage boys said to me, wisdom out of the mouths of babes, right? When he was younger, he said, "Dad, if we had no memory, we'd have no identity." I went, oh, that's actually a pretty fair point, and it's in that the thinking part that we think we know who we are, right? Yeah. And so, yes. And then when you ask someone, how do you feel? Which is easier for some people to access that information than others. Some people are very cerebral, aren't they? They exist really predominantly in their head. But yeah, when someone can tune into how do I feel about this moment or what you just said, that's accessing, a different thing. And then what was the third one you said?
Yeah. So the conscious being the feeling, the subconscious being the feeling, and then really the values of the soul, the language of the soul is the sensing, and that for me is when you're trying to, you're trying to get someone to go past what you think, what you know, even what you feel, is almost, it's like someone going, God, I had a sense that you were going to say that, or I had a weird sense that this was going to happen. And it's kind of tapping them, trying to tap them on another level.
Yeah. I find that level fascinating. I find that level fascinating. As much as I enjoy listening to people of reason, that, and I enjoy the truth. I enjoy when we find out the truth about something. That's fascinating, but it's not the whole story. It's not the whole story for me. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we don't know. And I've experienced some things in my life that are inexplicable, scientifically inexplicable. And I know that happened because I was right there. And that to me is awesome. That's exciting, because there is a level, and whether you want to use the word quantum or whatever word you want to use, there's a level of stuff that's going on that we get little glimpses of that we can't explain. That's exciting, right? Because that's potential in terms of connection and being a part of a system that we don't really know how it works. But then, so you've had those experiences. I mean, the telepathy between two people who are really deeply connected goes to the whole other level. The telepathy between me and my partner is ridiculous. We don't even need to be in the same room, and it happens regularly that we'll text each other the same thing at the same time. That's interesting. And then I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Pete, but I've experienced physical objects moving or being moved without someone actually touching them.
Wow.
So that's a whole other level. And I studied physics and maths in school. I'm not a faith believer. I'm not a flat earther. So I believe I have a reasonably critical mind in terms of, curiosity and a healthy cynicism around, magic and trickery and all that beautiful stuff. But I've seen things actually move right in front of me without being touched. And so I don't know how that works. And I love that I don't know. But, you got me on this little tangent because you were talking about sometimes we have a sense of something and we can't intellectualize it. And it's not even an emotion. It's a knowing, and that's an experience a lot of us have had. And so we don't necessarily even need to know how it works for us to be able to utilize it. I don't know how I can airdrop a video from this device to your device like that. I don't know how that works. Does that stop me from using the technology? No, of course not. I want you to get this video. I'm going to airdrop it to you, right? I'm not going to sit there and go, hang on. I don't know how that works. So this tapping into this connection to the greater system on some level that we can't explain doesn't mean that we shouldn't, enjoy using it.
Yeah. What's your superpower? Do you know?
Yeah, I get asked this question on some podcasts. What's my superpower? There's a few, I think. One of them is my ability to be able to connect with a wide range of people. Another is to be able to take these heady, philosophical, less tangible concepts and communicate them into a practical application. So that my clients can then take an idea and go, oh, right, so I just go do this, and it benefits their life. So that, taking something that's philosophical and turning it into the practical, I think is something I'm pretty good at.
It's probably quite hard to quantify, but I mean, for you, when you are working with people or leaders or, businesses and going through that, I mean, do you tend to see capabilities within them? Do you sense it, or is it a case of just being present for them?
Yeah, both. It's certainly been something that I've been aware of developing my ability in, the ability to be present. And I think when you, the more present you can be, the more you can quieten your mind, then you are creating space for things like a sense or a knowing to appear into. You know, the more noise there is and the more static there is, the harder it is for this knowing to appear. It kind of appears into the spaces. And also I believe that to be an effective coach, you need to be able to be completely present. You can't be thinking about the next client or thinking about what you're doing for dinner or thinking about how you're going to answer their question or what is the next question I'm going to ask you, or I've got this idea of how this coaching conversation is going to go, and this is how I'm going to, this is my, that's all distraction from being a great coach. And to quieten the mind, one of the strategies to do that has been a practice of self-acceptance, of developing self-okayness, which is a resolution with the past and an acceptance of the present moment. And as you practice this, the more okay you become with yourself, the more quiet your mind is, and also the less lenses, prejudgments I have on you. You know, we can only ever perceive each other through all of our own stuff. My version of you, Pete, as I'm, you know, in conversation with you, my version of Pete in my head is very much my version. You know, and it's flavored by all of my associations to what I think life is. You know, if we got 10 different people in the room and asked them to describe you, you'd get 10 slightly different versions. Right? No one can actually see the pure you because we have to perceive you through our lenses of bias and belief. And I think that the more resolved you are with the past, you know, that we can loosen our grip on the way we think things are or should be. We can loosen our grip. We can quieten the mind, and I can see you more clearly. Be more present, and therefore have a sense, and maybe a truer sense of where you are in this moment, where you're coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I suppose my question maybe is, you know, what's the what's the best question or the most powerful way to connect with someone, do you think?
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess that's to some degree contextual, you know, depending on who they are and what the context is in a moment, what's the question going to be. But I think underlying the words that you choose to use or the question that you choose to use, I think the underlying intention should be that I'm seeking to understand. If I'm seeking to understand, I think that's the best kind of premise for authentic connection.
Should a coach, and this is great, I know, I mean, I tip my hat to you because there's not many coaches can have this conversation, but should a coach understand, or are they there purely as a curator for it to unfold in the mind of the client?
I think a coach, if you have the ability to understand truly, well, as truly as possible, but more deeply than most, understand where and why someone is and where they're coming from and why they're coming from that place, I believe that then you are more able to coach, guide, support, ask the right questions to help them move from where they are to where they want to go or need to go. If you don't really understand where they're coming from, but you think you know where they should go, you can kind of ask questions or tell them, you know. But I think the ability to, because that's kind of making it about you, right?
Yeah.
If you have a preconceived idea of where someone should go to be happy or successful or to run a better business, whatever type of coaching you're doing, if you're a business coach and you think if they go do this, they'll have a better business, or if you're a life coach, if they think like this and act like this, they'll have a happier life, or, leadership, whatever coach you are. If you've got a preconceived idea of where they need to be, but you don't truly understand where they are, you're less likely to be able to help to get them, to get where they want to go or where they need to go.
Mm. No, it's a fascinating area, and I find it's, even with the likes of these podcasts, you get to speak to people we haven't spoken before, and and you get to connect on this level. But for me, it's very much a level of going, listen, you can do anything you say you are, and I have to take that as face value because I don't know otherwise. And that is so fascinating, and I think it's, there's a part of me almost is also disappointed that so many people are saying, you know what, I don't know that anyone's ever truly heard me.
Yeah.
And that I've actually find it quite emotional, quite heartbreaking, the fact that how the hell can we go through a life where we've never been so connected, social media connected, LinkedIn, whatever, billion connections, and yet somebody can say, I don't know that anyone's ever really heard me or listened to me or anything like that. How can that happen?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Again, I think it comes back to ego. People are so caught up in their own ness.
Yeah.
And again, like I said before, Pete, I think the more resolved you are with self, the less it needs to be about you. And then it really can be about the people that you're sitting with, whether it's a client that you're serving, or whether it's a friend or a family member or a partner or a loved one or whoever it is, that you can be more present for them, and they do feel, and then they can feel heard. But to get there, you've got to have sorted all your stuff out. And most of us haven't sorted our stuff out.
When will you,
Yeah, I know, right? I made it. I've arrived. Woohoo. Yeah, I do actually feel like I've arrived, to be honest. I feel like I've made it. I feel like I'm here. Everything else that happens from here on in will be what it will be. But I really do feel like I've arrived, and again and again and again. There's no finish line. It's being in this moment. And that's a a kind of perceptual choice, not choice, but it's a shift in perception as well. And have I worked all my stuff out? No, man, I've got stuff. I always will have stuff. That's part of the thing. That's where we've arrived to. It's arriving to this moment of going, oh, I'll always have stuff. The pain is inevitable. You're always going to stub your toe, and everyone is going to die, either before you or after you. Pain is definitely inevitable. But the suffering, the quality of the suffering and the extent to which we suffer is optional to some degree. And that's to do with, the suffering's in our thinking. So if we can cultivate habitual perspectives that decrease the amount or change the quality of, or shorten the length of time of suffering, then we're arriving continually into a more enjoyable existence, right?
I mean, even as you say that, I sort of think, it's like the pain is the fact, if you like, and the suffering is the story that we wrap around it, and
yes,
that's the thing. It's like, okay, how long do you want to hold on to this? How long do you need to suffer?
It's like, yeah. How long do you need to suffer? As long as you do.
Yeah, and that's,
yeah.
But it's understanding. It's like you decide when it starts and you decide when it finishes, right? But the fact, the pain, that's the fact. That's the bit. Yeah, it's your fact. But
yeah, absolutely. And it's fascinating. I do believe, I don't believe that we can necessarily have everything we want. I don't believe, there could be, John Smith decides that he wants to have a crack at being an entrepreneur, and he's got this idea and he wants to create, a multi-billion-dollar company. Can he or will he necessarily do that? Not necessarily. He might be delusional. He might think that what the idea that he's got he's going to be a massive success and everyone's going to want to buy one of his widgets. But he might be deluded. That might not be true. You know, just because he believes it doesn't necessarily mean that his idea is going to become $1 billion idea. But I do believe that the perspective that we have and the habitual ways of thinking that we can curate can improve our experience of existence on a daily level, in a daily way, you know. And it's not magic. It's simple stuff like gratitude. It's the discipline of a positive perspective, looking at what's possible rather than what's not. You know, the practice of self-acceptance and self-love, which is literally just saying to yourself, I'm all right, I'm okay. You know, so it's not anything kind of mystical. Yeah.
It is so powerful, as you say. And even when, I mean, it's back to sort of the law of attraction, right? You know, ask, believe, do, receive. And, you know, ask, believe, receive. It's that aspect of people saying, well, as you say, I've asked for $1 million company. I want to make widgets and all the rest. It's like, yeah, but they're all wanting. You know, one thing's not going to get you what you want. It's like, what are you built to do? You know, and it's getting past that.
Yeah. There's a nice little flip of words. I'm not sure if you've come across this before, but most people do these 3 words in this order. They think about, what do I want to have? And what do I need to do to get that? And that then determines who they're being. So I want to have the $1 million company, right? So I've got to go and work hard. And so now I'm working all these late hours and I'm coming home stressed and I'm drinking a bottle of wine to calm my nerves. And then I'm being this person who is distracted and never really present with anybody. And I'm tired and exhausted and I'm constantly never happy because that my happiness exists in some idea that I'm trying to have, right? Have, do, be. So the idea is we flip it. We go, actually, I'm going to focus on who I want to be as a person. You know, insert here your core values: kind, caring, generous, action taking, hardworking, if that's who you want to be, loving, compassionate, you know, whatever your core values are. Who is the character? Who is the person? If you were a fly on the wall at your funeral and a loved one was reading out your eulogy, what would you really hope to hear them say about you? How would you hope that they describe you, right? This is who you can choose to be in this moment right now. And who you be in this moment, that then determines the quality of what you do, the actions you take, the decisions you make, the interactions, the communications, which then actually ends up determining what you've got. You turn around one day and one day again and again, you turn around and go, wow, whoops-a-daisy, look what I've got. I've got amazing relationships. I've got this amazing career. I've got abundance. I've got love and happiness to a large degree, despite the moments of pain. And all of this came about because I was focusing on who I choose to be in this moment, not what I want to have, you know. So I like that be, do, have thing. And look, that's not to say that having a goal or a vision or manifesting is not functional. I think it's a great idea to go, right, I'm aiming for that, but then forget about that. You've said what you're aiming for. You've been super clear. You've done your visualization. You've got your vision board, your goals, whatever. Do that. And then come back into the present moment and focus on the character of how you're being right now. That's the best way to turn around in the present moment at some point in time in the future and go, wow, look at what I've created, you
know. You mentioned there a couple of times really about core values. I mean, can I ask what your core values are? And also, it seems to be an evening of double questions, but your core values and really what core values tell you about a person?
Yeah, sure. Some of my core values: kindness, consideration, love, generosity, compassion, and taking action. Action taking. I think of myself, I identify, you know, as a kind, caring, compassionate, generous, loving, action taking man. That's for me. It shouldn't be for everyone. None of my values should be for anyone else. They're just for me. But I really value taking action. And then, so to the second part of your question, can you remind me again? It was something about what does it tell you about a person or something?
Yeah, there's an underlying principle. If I explain that, it might sort of trigger for some people. I find their voids quite often are their values. And I suppose my question was, when people talk about their values, and when you're working with leaders and that, what do their values tell you about them?
Until we do the work, people's core values tell me about their expectations. What do they expect of the people around them? How should people treat me? How should people behave? Because until we've done the work on, or had this conversation, for a lot of people who haven't even sat down and elicited their own core values, they've still been guided by them, just subconsciously. They just haven't been aware of it. But our core values, guide our actions and behaviors and direction in life. And when we find ourselves in a lane that is out of alignment with our core values, not happy days, we're not happy when we're outside of alignment with our core values. But also for most of us, I don't know, I think most of us who haven't thought about this or had this conversation, our core values are our expectations on how other people should show up. If you're late to a meeting with me, that means you're disrespecting me. If you don't call me up on my birthday, that means you don't love me. If you don't hug me and kiss me, that means you don't love me, you don't care about me. If you don't wave when we're driving and there's a merging lane and I leave space for you and so you can merge in front of me, if you don't give me a little thank you wave, you're a rude, horrible, inconsiderate person. Right? My judgment on you, and I'm never going to even meet you, but I've judged you because my core value is that if you let me in, I'm going to say thank you. But I'm now projecting that onto you and judging you because you don't have the same core values as me. So yeah, it tells me, when people's core values tell me a lot about what they expect from others.
Yeah, I suppose it does help to see where they're at. And I love your values, because for many people, I've sort of said the difference. For many, their core values are their voids. It's like, I like honesty. It's like, why would you bring up honesty? It's a weird one to bring up, right? But
Yeah.
when you talk about that kindness and compassion, love, generosity, action, for me, my own, I suppose, really share is really, it's love, service, growth, and connection. It's those four things. It's like, if we do nothing but love and serve and connect with each other and grow, then wow, there's no lack based there. So
yeah, beautiful.
yeah, it's just understanding where we're at.
I think you've helped me, man, as well. I just took connection in terms of my core values and listing them. I think I took connection for granted because connection's massively important to me. I'm going to insert that. Thanks, Pete.
Nice. And that is what it's about. And I love the point that you said there. And it's really, I suppose, it's also the fact that's in the title of your book. It's being consciously aware of your values, or why you're doing it, or the have, the do, and the be. It's just being conscious of it and saying, listen, rather than autopilot, and this is what I am, and this is what, it's saying, well, why are you that? It's important.
Yeah. Values, being clear on your values is awesome for many reasons. They can be also the guiding, the litmus test of, am I on the right path or not? So, and like I said before, with your sense of purpose, the fire in your belly, if you're at a fork in the road and you're not sure which way to go, run it through the critical thinking process of which option here is most values aligned and which is most, aligned with the fire in my belly and my mission, my purpose, and then also for values, I've been using my values as my sense of identity. Having been lucky enough to have two identity crises, I'm using the word intentionally now, in my life, in my late 20s, when it all fell apart in London and I had no idea who I was. And, the recreational use of drugs in the weekends had started creeping into the week, and that was becoming a dependency. And I had a stutter I was speaking so quietly that the bus driver in Stoke Newington, the number 73 bus driver in Stoke Newington would be saying to me, "What did you say?" Because I was so unsure of myself. I'd looked in the mirror and I just saw someone that I didn't understand, let alone like. I loathed myself. I thought I was ugly and terrible. I didn't know who I was. And what had happened in this identity crisis is that I'd identified with my vehicles being relationships or career or hobbies or the things that we use to drive around life in to experience being who we think we are in the big wide world. So we identify as so-and-so's husband or wife, or we identify as, the tennis player or the coach or whatever it is. And these things are transitory. They can come and go, and they do come and go. And so there's potential crises when you identify with these things, because they can be taken away, or you can disassociate with them, and then you don't know who you are. So I thought, okay, well, if I'm not going to identify with being so-and-so's partner or father or the job that I do, how am I going to identify? And it comes back to this being. So I'm going to identify as the type of person that I choose to be, which is your values, right? So identify as a kind, caring, loving, generous, connecting, action-taking man. It's my sense of identity. No one can take that away from me. When a loved one dies, I'm still me. If I wasn't coaching anymore and I was doing something else, I'm still me. So I think our values can form a functional sense of our identity. And again, put them on high repeat. Make it part of your affirmations. Say it out loud regularly. You're fostering a sense of self that is more sturdy. It has more integrity, less shaky.
Yeah, it's even, I get some people so saying, you call yourself Mighty P, and if you're on the UK side of the Atlantic, they're like, God, you're so up yourself.
Yeah.
You go further afield, you go to the Americas, even Southern Hemisphere, and like, good on you, yeah, fair play, Mighty P.
Yeah.
And people say, well, why do you do that? And it's like, that is just, it's an affirmation. It's for me. It's a reminder.
Yeah.
It's a mantra for me. It's like, you got to turn up and, put this cloak on, because this is, who you are. And I say it's kind of like a value set. It's like, listen, if I live by these values and I set up, this is my mantra, these are my non-negotiables, this is who I am. And yeah, what happens, that's cool. But this is the way I will run my commandments. This is, the way I will service my life. Then great, good, bad, who knows? We'll just run it, right?
Yeah, fair play. Absolutely. Yeah. It's about integrity, isn't it? For yourself, it's not about displaying integrity. Integrity is what it says. It's internal. It's your own truth with yourself. And whether people pick up on, and people do, people are very perceptive, whether people pick up on the fact that you have integrity or not is kind of secondary. The primary part of integrity is that it's for you, right? So yeah, like you said, you having a name that represents your values and represents how you want to show up to live your best life. That's awesome, man.
Mm-hmm. It's a great mentor of mine, and I think it was Brian Tracy that came up with it originally, saying, it's when people pass comment about others, like, what is it you see in them that you don't like about yourself?
Yeah.
And I always thought that. And there was someone on the show recently, someone said, anytime you're passing or you're speaking about someone else, just add the words "just like me" on the end of it.
That's great.
And
Yeah.
simple. It's like, yeah, she didn't do this, just like me, or it's so true. I tell you one thing, you shut your mouth pretty quickly, and it's a great little reminder, I think, so
yeah. I love that. And we spoke about this earlier. You can only perceive somebody in your mind. In fact, you can only experience all life through your body and mind. So the bits of information that are available to us, that come to us through our senses and our extrasensory perception, these bits of information we represent them in our mind, and we have a projection of reality, in inverted commas, reality in our mind. Now that projection in my mind is flavored by the state of my mind, whether it's the past or the present. I just say, for example, I'd had, my state of mind wasn't great. I'd had some terrible news, and and I was feeling down and flat. The state of mind was heavy and dark. And I walk outside on this particular day, and it's a clear blue sky day, and the sun is shining, and there are some birds chirping and whatnot. I'm not even aware of any of that. It's a terrible day. I'm walking outside, and my actual perception of the day in my mind, my reality, my version of reality, is that it's a terrible day, right? On the flip side of that, I could be in a wonderful mood. The right chemicals are firing. I've just, made love with my wife, and I'm on top of the world, and everything's great, and I've just got this new client that I really wanted, and everything's going wonderfully well. And I walk outside, and it's cold, and it's pouring with rain, and it's dark and gray. But I walk outside, and it's a wonderful day. I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the, kind of thing. And this is all to do with the state of your mind. So, if I meet someone and they're wearing the same cologne as an uncle of mine who used to be horrible to me when I was a kid, and I've even forgotten that cologne, but that sensory perception is a filter, is a bias that's existing in my mind. And I've got a judgment on that person, and I'm like, I don't trust that person. Something about them I just don't trust. But it could be to do with my past associations, nothing to do with them. So I've got a perception of this person in my mind that's flavored by the quality of my mind and everything that's happened up until now. So, it's interesting that we have judgments on people, and those judgments are really judgments on ourselves, because I'm perceiving my version of you. And if I say, geez, I really don't like the way Pete does that thing, just like me, right? It's triggering something in me from my past and who I am, So it really is, you look at someone and goes, oh, that's a terrible thing to do. I'd never do that. And you go, actually, it's that part of myself that I'm actually triggered against right now. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Just like me.
Do you feel this conversation is actually happening, or maybe are you just asleep and having this in your dream?
Yeah, possibly. The Matrix. What a great film. The original Matrix was such a good film. Who knows? I tell you what, if this isn't reality, if this is just a projection, it's a pretty high quality one. It's pretty believable.
Totally. Yeah.
It's pretty believable.
Went off some beautiful rabbit hole there. It was gorgeous. Tell me, I mean, Jem, if for you, if you were to try and describe your fire in your belly in one or two words, what would they be?
Passion to play my part in evolution. Yeah. And that is it is the same. It comes into the same duality as radical self-acceptance of everything that is right now should be. And it shouldn't always be the way it is right now, because change is 100% inevitable. It's happening whether you like it or not. I want to be a part of that. I want to get involved in that. I don't want to be reactionary and a passenger and just having to deal with change. And I want to be a part of it. The fire in my belly is to play my part in evolution. Yeah, that's it. I mean, we could talk more into what lies underneath that sentiment. It's more than a sentiment. It's a passionate meaning to life. The fire in my belly is the meaning to life for me is to do what I can do to make things better. And I think that's deeply wired in us, not just in us, in all life. Evolution, species evolve, plants evolve, the earth evolves, everything evolves. This homeostasis is not actually about staying the same. Homeostasis is about the little improvements from moment to moment to moment. Or improvements is a judgment word. Change is change. It's evolution. It's complexity. order and chaos and all that kind of stuff. But it's happening whether we like it or not. And I'd rather be involved, consciously involved and engaged with it than kicking back going, Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of as you say, almost accepting that everything just is. And yeah, it's because, I mean, would you define yourself as pleasure driven, pain driven? Where would you sit on that side?
Oh, definitely pleasure driven. I prefer pleasure, although I'm not adverse to pain either. I'm covered in tattoos. You can't see them, but I've got a lot of ink on my body. And it's not because I enjoy the sensation of being tattooed. It hurts. But there's something about that, ritual rite of passage stuff. Oh man, I love pleasure. I'm very human. Whether it's, a good bottle of wine or, surfing, the pleasure of catching a wave, making love with my beautiful partner. Yeah, I love pleasure for sure. And it's good to be aware of it because, creating moments now where I'll have a craving, because us humans, we crave stuff, right? I really want a coffee. Man, I really need a coffee. I want that coffee. And we have the coffee, and within seconds, it's like, oh, I really need a mint now. I want to get a mint to get that taste out of my mouth. But you just were craving that taste 5 minutes ago, right? And then we're craving the mint, and then we're craving some water, and now I'm craving some food. And so we're craving animals. And it's nice to have moments to pause and be aware of that. I'm really craving a glass of wine right now. It's nice to be able to pause and go, just notice that. Notice the craving. Notice what that is. Is it really something that has to be satiated? Or can you just simply notice the craving itself and let it pass? Or do you go for the glass of wine?
It's not even 9 o'clock where you are. It's like if you're going
I know, right?
now, it's we've got trouble. But no,
we've got trouble.
It's so true. It's just the observation of self, really, isn't it? That's so powerful. So powerful. Jem, tell us, where can people learn more about you, get a copy of your book, hunt you down, track you down, stalk you, any of the above?
Yeah, sure. So first place to go, I guess, is the website, jemfuller.com. You can get the book through there if you want to. You can watch the TEDx talk. It's on the homepage of the website. You can find out about the work I do. So that's a good place to start. If you want to stalk me, I'm pretty easily accessible. Insta, LinkedIn, Facebook, Jem Fuller, just JEMFULLER. My team at the moment are reminding me every day, Jem, remind people that they can join your leaders group. We've formed a group, the Modern Leaders Conscious Communication, and it's on Facebook. And if you just find me on Facebook and join the group, Jem Fuller, Modern Leaders Conscious Communication. And the group that we're forming on there is to form a community of leaders who want to learn from each other and from me around how we can communicate more effectively. And especially post-pandemic, a lot of leaders teams are working remotely, and how do we keep them engaged? How do we keep them connected? How do we keep them aligned? What's the next level of being able to communicate as a leader? So there's a community, and so there you go to my team. I've done the right thing and let everyone know about that group. But come join us. I'm on there every day, and I'm posting stuff that I hope is helpful. If you want to jump on there, you can.
Love it. Have you a final message you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Yeah. I think it starts with you. As much as you are driven to get out there and do good work and help people, which keep doing, by the way, if that's what you're doing, 100% keep doing that. I think concurrently, the project that should have some attention is the project of self-love, the project of self-okayness. It's really, really important to enhancing your experience of existence. The more okay you are with yourself, the more okay you are with your perception of life. So yeah, it starts with you.
Wow. Jem, I suspect we could talk for quite some time. to be respectful of your time. So listen, it's been a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for your time. And listen, I wish you all the best for the book. And I know there's there's more coming, and I know there's plenty of insights inside there to come out of you. So thank you. And until the next time.
You are welcome, Mighty Pete. It's been really lovely to meet you. And yes, it's been a really enjoyable and heartening conversation, and stimulating for me too. You know, I tend to get bored and switch off pretty quickly if it's not a stimulating conversation, unless I'm working, obviously, and I'm all ears. But in terms of just having a conversation with someone like yourself, this has been completely stimulating, and the time has just flown by. So thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you.